So let's begin by davening that the zchut of our learning should help to bring home all of the rest of the hostages and protect our soldiers and Am Yisrael on all of the innocents, bring an end to this war, and also to be an Ilui Neshama for my mother, Shloma Leah Bat Menachem Mendel.
Amen.
Amen. You have a shul near you, the place where you're living?
Yes. So as it happened, I'm working here for Chabad. So Chabad is literally next door, but they don't have a minyan every day.
Oh.
So they only have during the week. They have only on Sunday, Monday, and Thursday morning. So I'll go when they have, and then otherwise there's a place. It's about 15, 20-minute walk from here. And they have minyanim. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so yes, I've been going to minyan every day, which is a good thing, I guess. Okay. Oh, and here is Michael Werner. He's only 6 minutes late. So we'll let him connect. And then we're going to go and press on in our here. Can you hear me still? Yeah.
Well,
Okay. Michael Werner.
It's not that okay. No, we are freezing.
Michael, can wave if you can. Uh-oh.
What's Shell?
It's off and on.
We don't hear you.
There. Okay. Michael. Oh, yeah? I don't hear. You don't hear. Ay. 1 second. Hold on. Okay. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Let's see if this is a better connection. So after that long hiatus, let's get to learning. So we're still learning this sugya on the Mishnah of Misha Chazo Bulmus, and we're going to pick up from here. We did this last week, but we need to continue. We have to have our context, so we'll pick up from the Braita here, Tanu Rabbanan. So, Paul, why don't you read? I'll make that bigger. Yeah.
מי שאחזו בולמוס, איפה זה? אוקיי. מי שאחזו בולמוס, מאכילים אותו הקל, תבל ונבלה, מאכילים אותו נבלה, תבל שביעית, תבל ותחומה, תניא היא דתניא, מאכילים אותו... תנאי היא דתניא?
Yeah.
מאכילים אותו תבל ואין מאכילים אותו תחומה, בן תמה אומר, where am I? תחומה ולא תבל. אמר רבא, איכא דאפשר בחולין, דכולי עלמא לא פליגי דמתקינן לי ומספינן ליעלה. כי פליגי בדלא אפשר בחולין. Go on.
Keep going.
מר סבר טבל חמור, ומר סבר תרומה חמורה. ומר סבר תרומה חמורה, אבל תבל אפשר לתקוניה. אפשר בחולין, פשיטה, לא צריכה...
Okay, actually, so we'll stop here.
Okay.
So this is where we got up to last time.
Yes.
I'm sure you all know this by heart by now. I'm being facetious.
Yes, they are discussing which is more forbidden than the other.
Right.
The
So which is
gradation
the
of the gradation of the forbiddenness, or something like this.
Right, right. So we had this discussion last week. So what we got from the beginning of the Braita is that somebody who has been overcome by bulmus, we feed him the lesser of different, the food that has the least amount of punishment entailed. And so we go through pairs. We say, so if you have tevel and you have a nevela, you feed him the nevela. If you have tevel and you have shvi'it, you feed him from the shvi'it. Tevel and truma, that's tanai. What does tanai mean?
It depends.
Say it again, I didn't hear.
It depends.
No.
Oh.
That's what, no. Tanai in modern Hebrew would mean it's conditional, but that's not what it means here. What does it mean here?
It's
Tanai.
It's machloket between Tanaim.
It's a machloket Tanaim. In other words, you could translate it literally as being it's Tanaitic. And what it means in context is like what Michael Schwartz said. It means that this is a subject of discussion between Tanaim. So this is what we're working on. So we have Tevel on the one hand and Truma on the other hand. So how do I know it's a machloket Tanaim? Because I have a Braita. The Braita says machlilin oto Tevel ve'en machlilin oto Truma. So this Braita is clearly a continuation either of the previous Braita or our Mishnah. In other words, there's no subject here. Who's the Oto? Machilin Oto. Who are we feeding here?
Presumably the person with bulmus.
Yeah, so right. So I'm just pointing out, right? This is, as is common here, the language is terse, but we have to always make sure we know what we're speaking about. So Machilin To Tevel. So the person who has bulmus, we feed him Tevel ve'en Machilin To Truma. That is, if those are the only two options in front of me, Tevel or Truma, then I give him Tevel and I don't give him Truma. Ben Tema Omer, he says the opposite. Truma, below Tevel. I feed him Truma, but I don't feed him Tevel. So now we have
This is the machloket shel Tanaim.
This is the machloket, right? This is the machloket Tanaim. So when we said Tanai, this is a machloket Tanaim. The Tanya, as we learn in a Braita, this is telling me what the machloket is. So now we have Rabbah, and Rabbah says, how do we understand? Basically, Rabbah wants to understand what's the basis for their machloket. So before we look at Rabbah, let's just remind ourselves in the other cases where there is no machloket, we have tevel and nevela, we feed him nevela. If tevel and shvi'it, we feed him shvi'it. So why is there no machloket about tevel and nevela or tevel and shvi'it?
The different items in these pairs have clearly different statuses, or they're different level. I mean, they're clearly different levels of severity.
Of severity, and we measure how. How do we measure the severity?
In terms of the punishment that is incurred by eating these different items.
Right. So in these cases, it's very clear that tevel is chamur. But when I come to tevel and truma, apparently that's not clear. That's the implication. The implication is, why do I have a machloket at all? Because apparently it's not clear that one is more chamur than the other. So if one is not more chamur than the other, how do you decide which one to give him? That's going to be our question. What other criteria can I use besides the severity of punishment that's associated with eating each item? So for this we have Rabbah. So Rabbah comes and says, Heicha de'efshar b'chulin, where it is possible with chulin, the kule alma lo pligi, dimatkaninan le umaspinan le, where the whole world does not disagree. In other words, everyone agrees that we fix it for him and we feed it to him. Ki pligi b'delo efshar b'chulin. When do they argue? When it's not possible with chulin. Mar savar tevel chamur, umar savar truma chamura. So each mar is referring to whom? Each mar
One
refers
of
to
the
whom?
Tanaim, to one of the Tanaim.
To one of the Tanaim. So one Tana holds the tevel is more chamur, and therefore you're going to feed him the truma, and the other Tana is going to hold that truma is chamura, and therefore you're going to feed him tevel. And then he goes on to explain what's the svara behind each one of those positions. Mar savar tevel chamur, about truma chazia lekohen. Tevel is chamur, but truma is fit for a kohen. So what's the implication? Tevel is chamur because why?
It applies across the board. It applies to everyone.
That what applies? That
Well, then the prohibition on eating tevel applies to everyone.
very good. No one is allowed to eat tevel, so it applies across the board, as you say. But truma is fit for a kohen, and so because it's fit for a kohen, now as a category, it will be considered more kal, even though the person you're going to feed is not himself a kohen. Umar savar truma chamura, aval tevel afshar litkune. Truma is chamura, but tevel, it's possible to fix it. So what does that mean? It's possible to fix it.
You miser it.
Yeah, right. So we say broadly meiser. You take trumot and maasrot from it. You can, in other words, you can fix tevel by taking out the matanot. And so therefore it is kal. That's what we're up to right now. This is what we got up to right now. So
How do you fix the tevel? What do you do
you take
to make it
you
acceptable?
you have to take trumot and maasrot, right? So tevel is our working definition of tevel is peirot, for which no matanot have been given. In other words, you didn't give truma gedola, you didn't give maaser rishon to the Levi, the Levi didn't give trumat maaser to the Kohen, and you didn't maaser sheni or maaser ani, depending on which year it was. So none of the matanot have been taken, and midoraita, you're not allowed to eat that. But so this is each of their views.
So it refers to a whole batch. It's not a single fruit. It's a whole
It
batch
could be
of
a
fruit.
it could be a single.
Well, then you have to cut. Oh, no.
Well, okay. In other words, tevel, the definition of tevel stands regardless of how much you have. You know, if you have a fig tree and you go out and you pick a bunch of figs and you bring them home. So from the moment you bring them home, you have to take trumot and masrot before you can eat. It generally speaking, it doesn't work that way. In other words, for every type of produce, there are different traditional stages that it goes through that to finish it off. So if you're talking about grain, you know, first you have to cut it down, and then you have to gather it up into bundles, right? And then ultimately you're going to bring it somewhere to do all the other processing. You have to do the threshing and the winnowing, and you know, and then ultimately you'll grind it into flour, and so forth. For things like so that we don't have to learn all of that now, but just to say that one of the things that's one of the actions that one can do that will force you to that forces the status to be a status of tevel legamre is to bring it into your home. So that's why I gave the example of if you pick a bunch of or even if you pick one fig and you bring it home. Once you bring it home, then you have to take trumot and masrot from it, even if it's just one fig. But you're right. In other words, normally you have a harvest and you bring a lot and so forth. So so this is our issue. So which is more chamor, truma or tevel? So I have a way of looking at each one of them. We talked a little bit about it last time, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit more today. But I think for the moment now, I want to continue. So Michael Schwartz, now I want you to read from here. Efshar b'chulin.
אפשר בחולין פשיטה, לא צריכה בשבת. בשבת נמי פשיטה, טלטול מדרבנן הוא. הכא במאי עסקינין, בעצית שאינו נקוב בדרבנן. מר סבר תבל חמור, ומר סבר תרומה חמורה.
Okay. So that's what we're stopping for here. Okay. So this is the Gemara now. I should have made this into a separate cubicle, whatever. But it doesn't matter. This is the Gemara now. It's discussing Rabbah's comment. So how did Rabbah begin? He said, "Heichadef shar b'chulin." If it's possible with chulin, nobody disagrees that we fix it and we feed it to him. So what does he mean here by chulin?
This is the produce that's already had the Maser and Truma taken.
It's produce that hasn't had.
Chulin?
Yeah, chulin. Because how do I know that? Because he says nobody disagrees that we fix it and then we feed it to him.
Oh, but what's the difference between chulin and tevel then?
Oh, so what's the difference between chulin and tevel? So in this moment, there is going to be no difference. At this moment, it's really just another. It's another way of saying. But what it means is heichad efshar b'chulin, when it's possible with chulin. And what does he mean now? What is possible with chulin?
Take out the matana.
So right. So and then what? And then we're going to feed the person who's stricken with bulmus. So when it's possible with chulin, nobody disagrees that we fix it. That is, we take the matanot and then we feed it to him. In other words, if you have tevel in front of you, it would seem like the most obvious thing to do is you take the trumot and masrot and then you feed it to him. So he says, yeah, that's true. So what's the machloket? Ki plige bidelo efshar b'chulin. The machloket is when it's not possible with chulin. Why would it not be possible with chulin? In other words, we just said, so in our scenario here, chulin is tevel. It's chulin, it's completely chol. Why do I call it chulin? Because right now, there's nothing kadosh per se that's been separated out. The truma has not been taken out. The truma is kodesh. But before you take it out, right now, it's all chulin. And you're makdish the truma when you take it out. So marsavat tevel chamur, marsavat truma chamura. So why wouldn't it be possible? What's the scenario where it's not possible with chulin? It's not possible to fix it and give him now from this chulin.
If it's on Shabbat, that's what he says.
Okay,
No?
so that's
there's a problem on Shabbat to do this.
To do the right to do the
Afrasha,
truma.
yeah.
Okay, so that's the first idea that the Gemara presents. Gemara says efshar b'chulin pshita. In other words, heichad efshar b'chulin. In other words, they're quoting Rabbah. If it's possible to give him chulin, then you give him you take the matanot, you give him chulin. So the Gemara is saying pshita. Obviously, there's no chidush there. Obviously, if you can take the Trumot Masrot, that's what you do. Lo tzricha. No, I still need Rabbah's statement because in the case where the case is on Shabbat. Why is that a problem on what's the problem on Shabbat?
Excuse me, chulin here is the fruit, or chulin is yom chol? What does it mean?
No, chulin here means the fruit. That's why we went back. Heichadev Shabbat. So we said that's produce that hasn't had Trumot and Masrot taken from it. And in our case, it's another word for tevel.
Another word.
It's
Okay.
right. In this context, it's another way of saying tevel. So efshar b'chulin pshita. If it's possible to give him from the chulin, then we take trumot and masrot, we give it to him. That Gemara says obviously, like there's no chidush there. So the Gemara says no, there's still a chidush. I still need to say what Rabbah said if it was on Shabbat. If I need to feed him on Shabbat from this chulin.
This discussion is not the discussion of Rabbah, it's the discussion of later rabbis about the psika of Rabbah.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. This is what we introduced. We said now we're discussing Rabbah. So Rabbah was discussing the Braita. And now we're trying to understand Rabbah's understanding of the Braita. So we're going through it sort of line by line. So the first thing is Rabbah says if what we have in front of us is chulin, So then I take Trumot and Masrot and I give it to him to eat. The Gemara is saying, that's obviously you do that. In other words, I don't need Rabbah to tell me that. So the Gemara says, no, I still need him to tell me that if it's on Shabbat. So we have a person who has been stricken by bulmus. It's Shabbat, and the food that I have in front of me is this chulin, which is tevel. And now what? Tzricha b'Shabbat. I need him to tell me that on Shabbat I can take the trumot and masrot, right? Because what is he?
Am I
says
allowed? Am I allowed to do this?
So this is what the Gemara is trying to figure out. Right? Amar Rabba hechad shabachulin the kuli amar lo pligi the matkaninan lay maspinan lay. Everybody agrees you take your mitaken and you give it to him to eat. So now we're saying, obviously that's true. So you say, no, it's not obvious because he's talking it would include even Shabbat. And why would that be a chidush? Because we would expect that you're not allowed to do that on Shabbat. In other words, the general halacha is you're not allowed to take trumot and masrot on Shabbat. Why not? Why can't you take trumot and masrot on Shabbat?
I can think of two different reasons. One is that there's a prohibition on alienating or acquiring property. And second of all, this would be a kind of sorting.
Okay, so it's really neither of those things.
Oh, well.
Well, you didn't. In other words, you're not acquiring anything, right? Because you already owned this before Shabbat.
You are alienating something, and you're not allowed to alienate either.
I'm not sure what you mean by alienate here and why that would be asur on Shabbat. But Michael, wait, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you. It's not the reason. It's not the reason. Michael Schwartz.
Speak about tiltul, but why should you take it out of your house? You could put it aside and the next day.
Michael Schwartz, why don't we take Trumot and Masrot on Shabbat?
It's a tikkun.
It's a tikkun. You're fixing something that was otherwise not ra'ui. In other words, before you take Trumot and Masrot from the produce, you're not allowed to eat it. So so when you come in, when Shabbat begins, if you have tevel when Shabbat begins, there's nothing you can do with it because you're not allowed. The only way that you'll be able to eat it is to take Trumot and Masrot. So you're going to change its status from something that wasn't fit to eat to something that now is fit to eat. So that's a tikkun. And you're not allowed to fix things on Shabbat because of the av malacha of, anyone know?
Gemor malacha?
Well, so right. So you're not allowed to gemar malacha. We learn it from the malacha of makeh bepatish. So in the list of malachot, we have the malacha of makeh bepatish. So what is makeh bepatish? It literally means hitting with a hammer. And what does that refer to?
Cleaning the work, doing the final touches.
Right. So you're making let's say a kli matachet. You're making a vessel out of metal, and you're the blacksmith or you're the metalsmith, and you're making this. So when you get to the whatever you do to make the final tap on your hammer to finish it, that's makeh b'patish, and that's what takes it out of the realm of a vessel in potential to being a usable vessel. So you're not allowed to finish something off to make it something that wasn't usable into something that was usable on Shabbat. So but if I take Rabbah at his word that everybody agrees that if you have chulin, you fix it for him and you feed it to him, and now the Gemara wants to say that would apply even on Shabbat. In other words, that's his chidush. his chidush by talking about chulin is obviously if it's during the week and if it's not Shabbat and I have chulin that's tevel, obviously, and I have to feed somebody. So okay, I take a minute and I take the trumot and masrot and then I feed him. So what is Rabbah telling me? So then the Gemara says, no, I need Rabbah's statement to include the case of Shabbat, where normally I'm not allowed to do that. But here, Rabbah is saying you would be allowed to. Shabbat, and then the Gemara says, B'Shabbat nami pshita. On Shabbat, it's also pashut, because tiltul mid'Rabbananhu. Literally, tiltul is just moving something around, is only an isur d'Rabbanan. We'll look at Rashi on this in a moment. But the implication is that when you're metaken trumot and masrot on Shabbat, when you're metaken the tevel on Shabbat, that's still really only an isur d'Rabbanan. That's the implication. In other words, I relate it to the av malacha of makebe patish, but really it's not makebe patish. It's only makebe patish midrabanan. It's only finishing something off midrabanan. So you'll take my word for that for the moment. So what it's saying is, Rabbah says, if you can give him chulin, then you're mitaken and you give him to eat the chulin. So what's the chidush there? The chidush is it's Shabbat. The Gemara says, call that a chidush. That's not a chidush because on Shabbat the only isur would be an isur d'Rabbanan, and certainly in the face of somebody who needs to eat to save their life or to maintain their health, certainly I'm going to be over an isur d'Rabbanan. So the Gemara finally says, Hacha b'maya skina. So what are we dealing with here? Ba'atzitz she'eino nakuv d'Rabbanan. We're talking about atzitz she'eino nakuv. What's an atzitz and what's an atzitz she'eino nakuv?
I think it's a pot that is not perforated at the bottom. Nakuv refers to the hole in the bottom, so it's not
Right.
connected to the ground.
Right. So in halacha, we differentiate for all manner of mitzvot hatluyot ba'aret. If you're growing something in a pot, whether that pot has a hole in the bottom or not. So if it has a hole in the bottom, by the way, even if it's not touching the ground, but the point is that if it has a hole in the bottom, it's as if it's the same as if you're planting it in the ground. If it's a sealed bottom, then it's separate from the ground. So let's say vegetables, we're talking about vegetables, right? So if you have a vegetable that you're growing in a atzitz she'eino nakuv, an atzitz that does not have a hole on the bottom, so do you have to take trumot and masrot from that? So the answer is yes, but only midin d'Rabbanan. There's a chiyuv d'Rabbanan to take trumot and masrot from vegetables or whatever you grow, any kind of produce that you grow, that's in an atzitz she'eino nakuv. So this is the Gemara's conclusion. Hacha b'maya skina. What are we dealing with here? Ba'atzitz she'eino nakuv. We're talking about an atzitz that's not perforated at the bottom, doesn't have a hole at the bottom. D'Rabbanan, where the chiyuv altogether to take trumot and masrot is only a chiyuv d'Rabbanan. Mar savar tevel chamur, umar savar truma chamura. In other words, and now understand this is what Rabbah. This is again, it's just the conclusion of Rabbah. Mar savar that actually from the Braita. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit more. There's still let's see how Rashi fills this in to make it more understandable. So, okay, Michael Werner. So we have Rabbah. He says, "Amar Rabbah hechad efshar b'chulin, d'kuli amalo pligi d'matkanin l'maspinan le." Rashi says, "B'de efshar b'chulin." Can read here.
שיש בחולין של תבל זה, להלינו,
Le, le,
להכילו,
right.
לאחר שתינטל תרומתו.
Okay. Can you explain? Can you translate this? B'de efshar b'chulin. It's possible with chulin. What does that mean?
So it refers to a case in which there is cooling of tevel.
Wait. So what is shesh dai b'chulin? What does that mean? Don't skip any words. Shesh dai b'chulin shel tevel zeh.
When there is, actually, I'm not sure.
What's dai? Dayenu. What is dai?
Enough.
There's enough
When there's
cooling.
sufficient cooling of the tevel, of this tevel, to feed, and afterwards,
V'achilo le'achar.
to feed the person with bulmus.
Yeah. Le'achar shetinatel trumato.
After taking truma.
After taking its truma. Okay. So now we have a more clear definition of what chulin is. Right? For our working definition is just tevel, but that's not exactly right. What does chulin actually mean in our context here?
Whether it refers, in our context, refers to tevel where where we have enough so that we can take the matanot and still have enough left over to feed the person with bulmus.
Okay, and just to clarify, so the enough left over, that's the chulin. Look at it this way, right? In other words, wait, let me just say this again.
It's a measure. It's a measure.
No, Tishon, just let me explain. So you have, let's say you have in front of you a basket of fruit. We'll use the, an amount. You have a basket of fruit in front of you. That's tevel. It's all tevel. So what does it mean? What is the chulin? The chulin is once I would take away the trumot and maasrot, which have a level of kedusha, what am I left with? Everything I'm left with is chulin. It's food that I'm allowed to eat, but it's not kodesh. There's nothing kodesh about it anymore. Before, when it was tevel, so in potential, some of it is kodesh and some of it is chol, some of it is chulin, right? Some of it is chol. Once I separate it out, then I know this part is kodesh, this is truma, this is trumat maaser, this is maaser, and so forth. That's kodesh, and what mashenishar, what's left, that's chulin. So this is what Rashi is explaining. B'defshar b'chulin. So what does he mean, b'defshar b'chulin? That there's enough chulin that's mixed in now with this tevel to feed to him, to feed the person who has bulmus, after I've taken away the truma. That's the chulin. So if you had, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is suggesting that So earlier we were suggesting the term chulin as Rabbah was using it referred simply to tevel. But maybe this is suggesting that maybe this is referring to the chulin that be left over in the tevel after we've taken.
Yes, not just suggesting. This is what Rashi's defining. This is Rashi's defining chulin. Why does the Gemara use the word chulin? What is Rabbah talking about chulin? That's what Rabbah means by chulin. So now if I go back and I read that into the way Rashi reads, the Gemara reads like this. Amar Rabbah, when it is possible to give the person with bulmus chulin, that is produce that had been tevel, but which is now mitukan, it's now been fixed because I've removed the trumot masrot, then no one disagrees that I would fix the tevel and feed him chulin. I'll feed him what's left over, which is the chulin. And they only disagree when it's not possible to give him chulin. So now let's see how Rashi understands what that means. Tekule alma lo pligi de matkaninan le maspinan le. Michael Warner, you can read another one.
But everything.
Just read Rashi first. Chulin.
Chulin. Chulin. And we do not feed him.
Read Rashi and then translate. Ve'ein ma'achilin.
Ve'ein ma'achilin oto lo tevel v'lo teruma.
Okay, and now you can explain what that means.
Okay, so we don't feed him either tevel or teruma.
All right, so Rashi's explaining just what Rabbah was saying. The Kule Alma, what does Kule Alma mean?
I don't, I'm not sure. I mean, I know such a phrase we use, and it's just not.
Okay. Michael Schwartz, what does Kule Alma mean?
The whole world, everybody.
Everybody, right? Literally means the whole world. Kule Alma. The whole world. And here our world is two Tanaim. Right now, that's our whole world. It's the Tanakama and Bentema. So the whole world, in other words, these Tanaim, lo plige. What does lo plige mean?
They have no machloket.
Right, there's no machloket. They don't disagree. They don't disagree that you mitakein. In other words, you take the trumot and masrot. In other words, this is a case when you're reading Rashi, where Rashi, the chulin here is Rashi's finishing the sentence. Right? What do you give him? Chulin. What do you feed him? Chulin. Rashi's just adding in the next word of the sentence that the Gemara leaves out because it's understood. But what? In other words, I don't have to worry about which is worse, tevel or truma, because when it's possible, let's put this all together now. So when it's possible to give the sick person chulin, meaning what? If it's possible to give him chulin by taking the trumot and masrot from the produce that's in front of me, then no one disagrees that that's what I do. I take the trumot and masrot and I feed him chulin. That's what I do. And then ein machilin to lo tevel v'lo truma. And then I don't have to feed him tevel or truma. I can just give him chulin, which is mutar l'chatchila. Anyone can eat chulin. Paul, ki plige.
כי פליגי דלא אפשר בחולין. אלא אם כן אוכל את כולו, וכאמר, מאכילין אותו התבל כמות שהוא, ולא יפרישו ממנו תרומתו, להאכילו תרומה לעצמה וחולין לעצמם.
Okay, stop there. So this is Rashi's expanding our understanding here, right? So kiplige, right? So they when do they
They
disagree?
disagree.
The loef shar
If you can't make chulin out of the fruit you have in front of you.
Ela,
אלא אם כן אוכל, since if it's impossible to do this procedure to have chulin, that means that you are eating the whole lot of it.
right? In other words, in front of you,
The tevel which is made should be divided into chulin and maserot, but you give it the whole quantity, the whole lot.
right? In other words, the only way that he could eat the part that's chulin is if it's still mixed together with the truma and the masrot.
Yes.
Vika amar, and so what Kamar, and this is what we're saying. Ma'achilin oto,
Tevel k'mot shehu. You give him to eat the tevel, so without the hafrasha, the way it is. Yes.
the way it is.
ולא יפריש ממנו תרומתו, you don't do the הפרשה. להאכילו תרומה לעצמה וחולין לעצמה.
Right? In other words, lo yafrishu mimenu trumato, which if you could be mafrish the truma, then you could feed trumat by itself and hulin by itself.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is where they disagree. So according to the Tanna Kama, you feed him tevel. You feed him tevel as is. Because you can't separate out the chulin. Right? We don't necessarily know why, but we can't, for some reason, we can't separate out the chulin. At this moment, we're not saying why. We're just saying there's a it's not possible to separate out the chulin. So Tanna Kama says you give him tevel. And I continue
without hafrasha.
Without the hafrasha. Ben Tema Omer.
Ben Tema אומר מוטב שיפרישו תרומתו ויאכילוהו כל אחד לעצמו ולא יאכילוהו תבל כמות שהוא. That's strange.
Okay, but first
it says you put aside the truma and then you have the chulin, but since you can't do this separation, so nevertheless do it, and then you should eat the whole of it, the whole lot, both of it.
No, but remember, Ben Tema doesn't. The case we're talking about is where it says the lo efshar bechulin. You can't give him chulin. So Ben Tema says if you can't give him the chulin, it's better that you take out the truma and you give him each part by itself.
So
but you don't give him
chulin and the truma.
Right. So now, given that, I understand what you're saying, but let's understand. You're saying it's strange, but if I'm already mafrish the truma, then I could give him the chulin, right?
Yes, but you give him also the truma.
I could give him also. So what's the point? Keep lige bidlo efshar bechulin, meaning what? Elohim can. Now we understand maybe better. Elohim kain ochel et kulo, unless he eats all of it. There's an implication here. Why isn't it possible to give him chulin? Because he needs to eat. We have a limited amount of food in front of us. And the doctor says he has to eat all of it. So now we've greatly limited our case. It's a very specific case. We have in front of us, we have Tavel, and the doctor or whatever we don't have to have a doctor here because the din is you have to feed him, right? So, whereas the understanding is I have to feed him everything that's in front of me, but what's in front of me is tevel. So now I have a question: do I just give it to him as is, or is it better for me to be mafrish truma, and then I'll have truma and I'll have chulin? He'll still eat all of it. But maybe it's better that I first mafrish the truma from the chulin because, but when it's tevet, what's the machloket? Mar savar tevel chamur shafil kohanim eino ra'ui. So the Tanakama says.
You come back to what you said, but you say that on one hand, chulin is not problem, and truma it's only the kohanim can eat them, but still somebody can eat it.
But still somebody can eat it. In other words, I'm making it now before I take out truma. Right? It's completely not fit for eating. Once I remove the truma, at least now I have made all of the parts are fit for eating, and the truma that he's going to have to eat, okay, but now at least it's fit for somebody in the world to eat. That somebody would be a kohen. So afa pishu no kohen, even though he's not a kohen, but it's better that I give him something that is fit for eating for at least some subset of the population, rather than give him tevel, which no one is allowed to eat. That's right. So the Tanakhama says better to give him tevel and not to give him the truma. And as the right, so that's the part of the Gemara that we're up to. Ben Tema says it's better to give him truma and not tevel. So Mar Savar tevel chamur. So the Mar here is Ben Tema. Shafilu the kohanim no raui. It's more chamur because even a kohen isn't allowed to eat tevel. Mar Savar truma chamura. Michael Schwartz she'ein la
heter. Heter. Aval tevel efshar limetaken lahu v'chulin yehu ruin l'chol adam. So that there isn't anything left over, but tevel, it's possible to fix.
No, she'ein la heter, not ein la yitra, ein la heter. Come on, like the way we say heter.
Okay. So it's not allowed, but tevel, it's possible to fix, since the chulin will be fit for everybody.
Right. So this is their machloket. Which is worse and which is better? Again, so just to recap from the point
is it better to do the hafrasha or not do the hafrasha?
Right. So in other words, our question at the beginning was, wait a second, I wanted to say something very specific, and it popped out of my mind. We have the person who has bulmus, and we have to feed him. And now we understand what our dilemma is. Our dilemma is I have a certain amount of food in front of me that I have to feed him, and I'm not sure what the best way to feed him is going to be. Is it going to be better for me to feed him tevel? And the idea is there's a certain amount of food, he has to eat all of the food. But under normal circumstances, he would not be allowed to eat all of this food, right? Because I have in front of me tevel, and I haven't yet removed trumot and maasrot. So if I remove the trumot and maasrot, then fine, he can eat the chulin, but he'll still have to eat more. So he's going to end up having to eat the truma. So is it better to do that, Or is it better for me to say, oh, that's now I remember what I wanted to say. Right? Remember, we started off with this question because we have these other pairs of things, Tevel and Nevela, and we had Tevel and Shvi'it, or Nevel, right? We have the different pairs of things where it was clear that one thing is more chamur than the other in terms of the punishment associated with eating it. But here, it's not clear to me. The truth is, you're chayav mita for eating truma, and you're chayav if you're not a kohen, and you're chayav mita for eating tevel. So either way, you're going to be chayav mita. So then, if that's true, how do I choose? That's our dilemma. And so we say, okay, so if I have to choose between the two, Ben Tema says better for him to eat truma because tevel has no heter for anyone, right? Kohanim are not allowed to eat it. No one's allowed to eat it. And marzava truma chamura because the truma will never have a heter for the person who's eating it, who's not a kohen. But tevel, I could fix it for him. The chulin, right? And then it would be the chulin part of the tevel would be ra'ui for anyone. Okay.
Hold on a second. I'm still a bit confused. We're talking about a case where you can't take truma. Rava says kipoligi delo efshar.
Right. So what we're talking. So right. So the question is, in this case where it's lo efshar. So wait a second. We have to finish Rashi, but let's just. I'm going to rephrase. I understand what you're saying. We have to rephrase this now, right? Because now we understand that Rashi is saying, "Heicha de'efshar bechulin, heicha de'efshar bechulin, b'kulei alma lo plige." What was that case? When it was possible, if it's possible to eat the chulin, now we understand what that means. Is I have in front of me produce. And Rabbah says, if it's possible to eat just the chulin, then everybody agrees, you do the hafrasha and you give him the chulin. So keep lige the lo efshar b'chulin. It's not possible to eat the chulin, ela im kein ochel et kulo, unless he eats all of it. In other words, not just the chulin, but all of the tevel. In other words, all of what is now tevel, he has to eat it in its entirety. So,
okay, I understand now. They're not it's when you can in fact take the truma, but he has to eat both the chulin and the truma.
He'll still have to eat both the chulin and truma. So, ki pligi b'dlo efshar b'chulin, it won't be possible for chulin alone. It's not enough for him to eat just the chulin. So we're reading it differently than we read it earlier, right?
Okay.
So marsavat tevel chamur shafil kohanim eino ra'ui, marsavat truma chamura she'en la heter. Truma is more chamur because there's no heter for it, but tevel there is a heter for it. You're metaken and then you can eat it. Then the chulin is ra'ui l'chol adam.
But in this scenario, you can't. אתה לא יכול לתקן את הטבע. You can't fix it because you could fix it in principle, but if you do it, then you still have an issur, the issur truma.
So, b'diuk, that's exactly the tension. That's exactly the tension. So one opinion is you don't fix it because it's better to not fix it because he has to eat everything. So the question is, do I fix this tevel or do I not fix the tevel?
Mm-hmm.
So one says it's better not to fix it Why is it better not to fix it? Because even though I'm not going to fix it, tevel by definition or conceptually is less chamur than truma. Why? Because it has a tikkun. It's like right now I can't take advantage of that tikkun, but tevel in potentia has a tikkun. Truma has no tikkun, and that's what Rashi means. It will never. Once I make it truma, I've cut off the possibility of it having any kind of heter. But the tevil, as it is, even though right now it's not mutar, but it could be mutar. So, and as I say, this points to a deeper conceptual machloket. One way of looking in the machloket is, what do I go after? Do I go after what's in front of me right now? Or do I go after what its potential is? Because what I have in front of me right now is tevel. That's all I have. Do I look at it as tevel, or do I look at it as future truma and chulin? So one says you have to look at it as it is now. Right now, it's tevel, and tevel, you're not allowed to eat it. No one's allowed to eat it. So you have to do something. So that Mandamar says, okay, so you'll be mafrish the truma. And so, yes, he'll end up eating truma, but at least now you've given a heter to the tevel. And the other one says, no, we're not going to do that, because once you do that, the truma, you've given him something that can never be mutar for him. But before I do anything, right now in potentia, I could make this mutar. So it's better to give him something that potentially could be mutar, rather than actually give him something that will never be mutar.
Well, what is strange is that
there's a lot of things strange.
No, if I look at the chomer, at the material, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you do this separation or not, because this separation is only in your head. It's
right.
It's nothing material.
It's a halachic distinction. It's not a material distinction. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, but that's the way halacha works, right? We make these distinctions, and so now we're wondering, right? What is it better now to?
But there are, of course. I think that I don't know many halachot are material. If you don't eat basar v'chalav, you have basar and you have chalav. This as two separate matters, materials. Yes.
Yeah. No. I understand. It's not that it's only that it's not only it's not the only distinction in halacha, but it's a common distinction in halacha. Look, even to say basar b'chalav, right? That's a distinction. That's a Torah distinction. In other words, I could look at basar and chalav and say it's all food, and I'm a human being and I eat food. So why do I distinguish between them at all? Because halacha says there's a distinction between basar and chalav. But you're also correct in saying that when I'm looking at the tevel in front of me, let's say it's a basket of dates.
Yes.
So whether I call it tevel or whether I say it's truma and chulin, that's entirely a halachic distinction, because I don't actually change anything physical, anything material about the food in front of me. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just pointing out. Okay, so now we get to the point in the Gemara where the Gemara
says, like saying about somebody if he's a Jew or not a Jew.
Yes.
But both of them are persons.
Yeah.
One is the child of two Jewish mother, and so he's a Jew.
So he's a Jew. or he's a ger, right? Actually,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
but right, and this is, this is why we, it's certainly related to how we start off every week. We say Havdalah, right?
Dala.
Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, ben or
L'chol.
l'choshech, ben Yirmiyet ben
Mhm.
Yisrael Amim. The Gemara
Mhm.
brings other
Mhm.
Havdalot. There are many,
It's a Havdalah in time, yes. Okay.
so there are
Not in
many,
matter, it's in time, yes.
right? So this it's a basic concept that we get from the Torah, which is certainly amplified in halacha, of distinguishing, even if it's entirely in our heads, as you say, even if it's not a physical manifestation of distinguishing, but distinguishing is a basic norm, it's a basic concept in Torah and in halacha.
For that
So,
matter,
Havdalah in time, but uh, time which is in Shabbat, it's a moment in Shabbat, and you have a moment in Yom Chol, and they are both moments, but you did a difference between them.
right, and the way, right, right, and then of course the way we determine chagim,
Mhm.
which is, that's something that's dependent on us, right? Because the
Mhm.
Chazal fixed the calendar.
Mhm.
That's a distinction that we make based on what the Torah says. Michael Werner, what did you want to say?
and nothing in particular point, only that, that this is basically the very, very, just about the very first
No?
passages we studied back in days of yore from Brachot, in fact, were about distinctions.
Oh, he's gone.
You're gone.
What do you remember from that?
Oh, like when
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Tell me what you can hear again.
you're back.
What do you remember from Brachot? What do you
Well,
remember from Brachot?
um, well, it was, when is the what is it, when is the earliest you can say Shema, when you make this distinction, versus that this page, which distinction, when X distinction is visible, that's the earliest that you
Yafeh.
can.
That's okay, that's an interesting twist on this, in the sense there, right? Right. So when you can distinguish between
Green and blue, or
Chayil
between their
and Lav,
space, or
Oh,
between
Shell,
Chayil and
hello,
Kafeh.
where are you?
Tell hello, hello, hello. Oh, no, okay, no, all right. Tell me. Oh gosh, hold on. Uh, I'm breaking up again. All right. Can anybody hear me yet?
actually now you're perfectly clear.
Okay. I'm going to come back to the Gemara now while we still have a few minutes, hopefully, before I break up again. So let's see. So this is what we're up to now in the Gemara. We got up to this point where the Gemara says, Efshar b'chulin pshita. If it's possible to give him chulin, you give him chulin, Rabbah says. Pshita, that's obvious. Obviously, we're going to give him that. So Rashi now explains, Efshar b'chulin pshita, Dimatkaninan. In other words, again, Rashi's filling out the sentence. Rashi reads this as follows: if it's possible to give him chulin, obviously we fix the tevil in front of us and give him the chulin from that tevil. That's how Rashi is reading the Gemara. So then the Gemara says, Lo tzricha b'Shabbat. I need it for the case of Shabbat, sha'afilu hu Shabbat. Shasur lafrish truma maaser yafrishua v'lo yatchiluhu tvalim. Right, and so what does it mean that I need it for Shabbat? Meaning, Rabbah is saying, why is it? Why does he say that if it's possible to give him chulin I give him chulin. Obviously, I would give him chulin if I can. So the Gemara says, no, Rabba means I give him chulin even on Shabbat. That if it's even on Shabbat, when you're not allowed to normally be mafrish trumot and masrot, but nonetheless, Rabba is saying you would be mafrish the truma and masrot and not give him the tevel, even on Shabbat. So the Gemara says to that, that's also obvious. Tiltul midurabananu, and tiltul here means tiltul means to move something around, but here it's referring the way Rashi, the way we understood, the way Rashi understood it. It's tiltul midurabanan here means taking the trumot and masrot. That's only an isur durabanan on Shabbat. So obviously, if that's an option, I don't need Rabbah to tell me that I'm going to give him chulin even on Shabbat, even if it means I have to be mafrish trumot and masrot from the tava. So ultimately, what am I saying? Acha b'maya skinan, batzitz sheino nakuv. So Michael Werner, I'm going to have you read this last
Okay.
Rashi. Go ahead.
Batzit she'enu nakuv. The tevel shelo, madrich,
Midrabanan.
the midorabanan. Thank you. The
Keep going. Yeah, go ahead.
Vishavot, Vishvut, the Dehafrishet, Ma'asarot, Abishabat de Rabbanan. Eshmoinan, Shediche, Hashabot, Avalo, Yachilonuhu, Tevel de Rabbanan. Deato,
Datu,
Lemashre, Nami, Tevel, and Deraita. Ki hai,
Gavna.
Gavna.
Okay. I know that was challenging, but you did well. So batzitz sheino nakuv, the tevel shalomi durabanan. What does that mean?
So it's tevel that's not something that doesn't have that. So something that has the status of tevel only de Rabbanan as opposed to deraita.
Okay, so what's the something? Beit atzitz sheino nakuv.
That's produce that grew in a pot that does not have a perforation in the bottom.
Very good. So its tevel is the Rabbanan. And therefore what? Ushvut, the hafrashat. What's a shvut? We did this a long time ago, but I think we did it more than once. What's shvut?
I don't recall.
That's okay. Anybody?
If
No.
I remember correctly, was that it's something that's forbidden, but it's allowed in the Beit HaMikdash.
Oh, it's interesting because I think the last time it came up, that's also what you remember. That's true. That's a general rule. Ain't shvut b'mikdash. But what's a shvut? A shvut is, think of it for the purposes of this discussion, and this is generally true. It's an isur d'Rabbanan for Shabbat or Yom Tov. I'm not going to do this next. We only have a few more minutes, but it's in there's a list of of shvuyot, of shvut, in the 5th parak of Beitzah. At the time we looked at them, right? That you're not allowed to ride on an animal on Shabbat because of the fear that you're going to tear off a branch to beat the horse with, or beat the animal with. You're not supposed to swim on Shabbat. They're different, and those are all shvut. In other words, they're gzerot midurabanan for Shabbat and Yom Tov. So here, atzit sheno, we're talking about atzit sheno naku, the tevel shalom midurabanan, ushvut, in other words, the isur shvut, the isur of not doing something on Shabbat, of the hafrashat maasrot b'Shabbat durabanan. So the shvut of not of taking trumot and masrot on Shabbat, that's durabanan. So we have a case where the produce itself needs hafrashat trumot and masrot midurabanan, and also taking and now it's Shabbat, taking the trumot and masrot from anything is also only an isur durabanan. So ashmoinan sheyidcheh hashvut v'lo yachiluhu tevel durabanan. So it's coming to teach me, or it's implying to me, it's teaching me that the shvut should be pushed away. The shvut of taking trumot and masrot should be pushed away, and one should not feed him tevel, even tevel durabanan. Why? The atu lemishrei nami tevel dioraita. The atu, right? Sheyavo lemishrei lahatir nami gam tevel dioraita. Sheyavo, if we uh, uh, we're letting you take the trumot and masrot from this tevel, which is mita rabbanan, even on Shabbat. It's better to do that than, because otherwise, if we feed him tevel, even if it's tevel mita rabbanan, people will come to think or to make it permitted ti tevel dioraita ki hai gavna, in this case, in a case like this. Okay, let me say this in big picture terms. So so what was our problem? Our problem here was, I'm trying to understand Rabbah. Rabbah says, again, we have a person with bulmus, and I have a limited amount of food that I can give him. And the food that I have in front of me is tevel. And Rabbah says, if it's possible to give him chulin, then everybody agrees that you would be mafrish the trumot and masrot from this tevel, and you would give him the chulin. So the Gemara wants to know, Efshar b'chulin pshita. Obviously, in other words, Rabbah is not giving me any chidusha to tell me that if you can give him chulin, you give him chulin. So Gemara says, no, I still need Rabbah's statement to tell me that you can do that even on Shabbat. That what? I could be mafrish trumot and masrot from this tevel, even when it's Shabbat. So the Gemara says, Shabbat nami pshita. That's also obvious that I could do that, because after all, being mafrish the trumot and masrot on Shabbat is in itself just a problem midurabanan. So the Gemara ultimately says, so what are we talking about here? It's what's Rabbah's case that he's introducing to me that is a chidush. Rabbah must be talking about a case where the tevel that's in front of us was grown in an atzitz she'eino naku. And so its tevel is altogether only a chiyuv d'Rabbanan. And so what would I think? I shouldn't have to worry about taking anything at all. It's tevel d'Rabbanan. It's Shabbat. So why didn't I just say, look, there's an isur shvut of taking trumot and masrot on Shabbat. But here I have somebody who's in desperate need I would say forget about the shvut of you know forget about the whole thing. I just say, look, I don't have to worry about this at all because the tevel itself is only an isur d'Rabbanan. So Rabba's chidush is you would still take the trumot and masrot from this tevel d'Rabbanan. That is, you wouldn't push away the shvut of taking trumot and masrot. Because why? Because we want to instill in you the idea that you're not allowed to eat tevel. So ad kedei kach, I would let you take trumot and masrot from this tevel that's the Rabbanan, even on Shabbat, so that you don't think that you're allowed to eat tevel dioraita in a similar case. And therefore, marsavar tevel chamur, and that's the svara then of Ben Tema, the tevel is chamur. Marsavar Tanakama says truma chamur. So this is a little bit obscure. It ends up being a little bit obscure because what we did here is we made a diuk just in these first few words of Rabbah to so that we wouldn't think that these words of Rabbah are superfluous, that they're not telling me something I didn't know. So it ends up that here's a halachic chidush that when it's possible to be mafrish the trumot and masrot, even on Shabbat, from tevel the Rabbanan, that I tell you it's better to be mafrish the trumot and masrot, even though that's normally asur, because I want to instill in you the idea to never eat tevel when it's your right. So you might think that if I let you eat this tevel now without taking trumot and masrot, then in a similar situation, when I have a person with a bulmus who needs to eat, and the only tevel I have is tevel dioraita, you'll think, oh, yesterday or whatever, last week I gave him tevel d'Rabbanan, I'll give him the tevel dioraita. So now we say, Kamashmal, no, that you're going to be mafrish trumot masrot when possible, even for tevel d'Rabbanan. Okay, I hope that made sense. And that's where we're going to stop for today. We're going to continue this next week, Bezrat Hashem, Leimatanai. And yeah, that's it. Any last questions or comments? No. Okay, good job.
All right,
Have a
thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, Leto.
Good
Bye-bye.
day.
Oh,
Good day.
good day. Oh, wait. So you're all in Israel. So this doesn't matter, but you're changing your clocks tomorrow night, right?
Mhm.
Oh, are
Yes.
we? Oh,
Yeah.
Yes. Friday morning.
oh,
Right.
okay. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, I actually
Okay.
prefer winter, but yeah, that's
I do too, but
Yes,
So
well,
when will be the shiur next week?
so for you this makes no difference. The shiur will still be 7:30, but for me, right now, I started at 1:30, so next week I'm going to go back to starting at 12:30. And wait a second, I'll just tell you.
It's just
So
for
next,
1 week. I think it's just for 1 week.
well. You're flying back for Pesach, no?
I'm coming back for Pesach, so hold on. Where is? Never know how to use it. Here. I'm coming back on the 7th. So from my point, so then 2 weeks, the shiur will be on the 9th. I'll be home. Mitzidi, I'd like to give shiur because then we won't have shiur over Pesach. So, but presumably that should work, unless people feel like they're too caught up with Pesach to come to shiur. But it might be a good distraction from your other preparation.
Hysteria, yes.
Don't get hysterical.
I'm always hysterical. It's too late.
Keep
But of course,
calm.
you tell somebody to stop being hysterical, and they just get more hysterical. So you lose out either way.
I say keep calm and learn Gemara. Okay.
Good
Bye
night.
Bye-bye.
Good
bye.
night.
Bye bye.